to see you one day. I'm going
Oh,
to
you
come
want
up
to
and
do,
see
yeah.
you. I have to. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my new show, Out of Nowhere. Well, my guest today is Jillian Haslam. Now, I've just been looking back at my records. I think it was 2014 or 15. Yeah, be about 14 or 15 when you were last on my show. She's a best-selling author, recounts growing up in an Indian English family during the 70s, facing racism, starvation, object poverty of a family. Miraculously surviving, she will inspire listeners with tales of survival, triumph, while outlining key skills that lead audience members find new strength and hope that they ever imagine. She shares her inspiration story of sheer courage that resolves, leading to a success redemption. She's a popular media guest who's appeared on dozens of TV and radio shows all over the world. Let's welcome Jillian to the show. Hello there.
Oh my gosh. Hello, Bob, and thank you so much for this invitation. I was truly honored to receive your message, and I'm truly honored to be on your show again. You're one of the more, I could say, the best interviewers, journalists, and broadcasters that has ever interviewed me, and I have been interviewed by quite a few. So it's quite an honor. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, you know, things have changed over the years. I'm still doing my radio show, still trying to get the best guest. You're one of them as well. Uh, can you tell us about your childhood in Calcutta and how it started, you know, up under the stairs? How did it
Yeah,
all
sure,
begin
Bob.
for you?
My father and my mother were both British. Their parents were actually, or they went over to India during the time of the East India Company. They're what they call the British Raj. And their parents went over there. So both my dad and my mom were both born in India at the time of the British Raj. And then India got her independence in 1947. And the British were given 1 year in which to leave the country and to come back to Britain. Hundreds of families, thousands of families came back to Britain. My dad's sister, with all her kids, were one such family that came back. And hundreds of families decided that they wanted to remain in India and not return because they loved India. But secretly, I thought my dad loved the weather better. So he was one such person who decided, oh, I'll just stay in India and I love it here. And, they had a great lifestyle. But unfortunately, obviously, after 200 years of, whatever happened in India and the British, occupying India, the the whole the whole system changed. And my dad never ever blamed Britain for not, helping him to go or return to Britain after that, because after the 1 year had lapsed, Britain just said, that's it, that's what we do for you, and they closed the doors. So India, basically, every single day, the papers were full of, India's for the Indians, and there was a lot of unrest, which is to be expected. And many families, so I can speak only of my own, we were reduced to nothing. We were reduced to living under a flight of stairs, which you saw, Bob, in my old book, the last book, Indian full stop, English full stop. And my parents lost 4 kids, one after the other, to abject poverty and malnutrition. It was as though death took one of us and left one of us and took one of us and left one of us. I was one of the lucky ones. I survived, but we survived under the harshest of circumstances. So we At first, my earliest memory is my mom taking us from one person's house to the other, and sometimes people allowing us to stay. Sometimes people are telling us, you have to move on. We can't look after you all anymore. And then we went to live under a flight of stairs where just about 2 feet from us, people washed their clothes, went to the toilet, bathed their children. It was the most terrible circumstances. And when we grew up, we went to live in a proper slum and that's where I spent my entire younger years and teenage years up to the age of 17 when I left Calcutta for Delhi. But just to give you a very brief idea of the state of the slum, we lived in a room which was about 8 by 10 feet. We filled water from a tube well. We had hardly any electricity. We had no money and probably one meal a day if we were lucky. And approximately 3,000 people plus shared 3 toilets. So that's where I grew up.
Yeah, it says a lot. When we talk about it in the UK, saying about people have no money and everything, but you being in a place like that, how did you cope living under stairs then? Since your childhood, tell us a little bit about day-to-day running, living under the stairs, and going out and trying to get food.
It was extremely harsh circumstances, Bob. It was, well, I remember the time when we were living under the stairs. I was the elder one. Vanessa, my little sister, is 2 years younger to me. I remember my mom actually going to this friend of hers who lived upstairs in this little tiny room. And she asked her friend to keep us. And they said, well, we can't keep you in our home, but you can stay under the flight of stairs. I was about 8 or 9, 10 little tiny little stairs. But anyway, we stayed under there. In fact, when I took the Hollywood
Oh,
director back there, he said, "This is just enough for a four-seater dining table, Jillian. It's so tiny. How did you live here?" But my mom put down a plastic sheet, and that's where we laid our heads down. But on a day-to-day basis, we would go out in the lanes. We would stare at all of these vendors who would, cook these hot puris and kebabs and all these kind of things. We would stand there and stare at the food. And sometimes they would splash us with hot oil and say, like, get away, don't stare at the food. And most of the time, they would just take a piece of paper or a patta, like that's a leaf, a dried leaf, and they would put the food in, put it in our hands, and say, "Now get out. And if you come back, we'll really burn you." But they never ever burnt us. They gave us that food every single day. That's what I mean when I say that the poorest of the poor help to save our lives. And when we were living under the flight of stairs, we both, my sister and myself, we got very ill because, there was no drainage system, there was no sewage system, there was nothing. So we were just living in abject squalor.
no.
And that's why Vikas Swarup, the guy who wrote Slumdog Millionaire, when he endorsed my current book, which is called A Voice Out of Poverty, he said, "This is just a story of triumph and squalor and everything, the magnificence of it." But we got ill, and my mom asked another friend of hers to keep us. And she said, "Will you just look after my two little girls because they're probably going to die here?" And the lady agreed and took us in. She loved my little sister Vanessa. She did not love me because Vanessa was
Oh
very
God, yeah.
fair, very blonde, and a little dolly. Actually, she still is. And
Like a doll.
less, absolutely, Bob. She's very cute looking, and I wasn't. So she took a dislike to me. But for that, she would she would take me by my ear every evening, and she would take me down that flight of stairs, and she would show me an Indian style toilet, which is about 2 by 3 feet, very, very, very tiny, and about 6 feet in height.
Yeah.
And it would be pitch dark inside, but she would open the door and she would show me inside that toilet. And there were hundreds of giant cockroaches in that toilet, and she would push me in there, close the door, and put off
Oh,
the light. every single day of my life. And I used to have to stand there, and my sister used to sit outside the toilet and say, Julu, don't move because they'll fly. Just don't move. And I was tortured to such an extent that I felt them sitting on my legs. I felt them sitting on my neck. And this lady when my mom used to come, we used to just have to stand there. My mom used to say, are you all saying your pleases and thank yous? Are you all being good children? Are you all being polite? Are you all being grateful? Those were my parents. They just wanted us to be grateful. And we used to stand there to attention and just say, yes, mommy, of course, mommy, thank you, mommy, thank you, auntie. We used to just carry that on. But the torture was so bad that I basically started to suffer with a nervous disposition. I lost my voice and I fell down up to the age of 14, 15, 16. I just kept falling down and falling everywhere I went. That is how harsh it was. And then when we left from there, my dad, at the same, because he had been through a lot with the army, he got very ill himself. He had one cardiac arrest after the other. So he was taken in by the Salvation Army, where they looked after him, where they looked after ex-servicemen free of cost, because we had no money to pay for medical treatment or hospitalization. So they looked after him. And my mother was just working for these ladies, trying to do whatever she can to put food in our mouths. And eventually my dad got better. He came and took us from under that flight of stairs and took us to live in this little room in the slum, where, to be honest, Bob, I think it was the happiest day of my life that my mother took me from that lady's house. I didn't, at first, she took us back to live under the stairs, but I was delighted. I couldn't wait to just get out of that torture chamber. So even today, when I've finished my whole degree in public speaking, people can't believe that I've taken to public speaking after what I've been through.
It must have been so hard for you, very difficult, and with your dad being away as well, being very well. And I suppose you wanted to please your mum, saying, "Yeah, I'm all right, mummy here." But there comes a time in your life where you think, "I've got to say something or do something to attract my mum," and I think you did, didn't you?
Yeah, my mom used to
To
frequently
say,
visit and keep on trying to check on us, see if we are okay. And of course, always trying to thank this lady profusely for what she was doing for us. And one day when my mom visited, my mom just said, are you all okay? And I just stood there and I just wet myself because I couldn't talk and I couldn't take it anymore. And I think if my mother never had to take me that day, from there, I don't think I would have survived anymore because I couldn't take any more torture. But I just wet myself and I stood there, and my mom looked at me and she knew that something was terribly wrong. So she said to me, guess what? I've come to take you all today. And I was shivering, I was shaking, I was crying. I don't know where
"Oh,
I was, Bob. I was such a tiny little girl. And I know I just picked up my
yeah,
bundle of little clothes and I went. And when we got out of that place, my sister and me were singing and dancing and running down that road with my mom. We were walking back to that flight of stairs. That was our home. But honestly, it was like I was going to a palace. I was going to a castle. I was going to the best place on earth, because just to get out of there was just great. And my mother kept on, don't be ungrateful. Don't poke fun at her. Stop saying those things. But my mother didn't comprehend. She knew something was wrong when I told her, but I think with all her problems and poverty and everything that she was going through, I don't think she really could understand the extent of the abuse that I had um, encountered with this lady, that I had endured.
but there were a lot of nice people around you to help you, to give you a little bit of some rice or milk for the children then when you were growing up. Um, it's so nice, but they helped you out because you wouldn't have had anything for them, for small ones underneath you. When you start to look after the younguns, it's so difficult. Very old yourself.
Yes, Bob, indeed. That's why I fight for poverty, and wherever I go, I try to. And that's why I have six charities today, because I'm just so grateful. And I keep on saying to people, I know the BBC, when I was on the BBC, they asked me, um, Jillian, with everything that you've been through in India and with all of the hardship and the poverty and the loss of your siblings, and it's like you've been through 10 lives in one, but don't you feel animosity? Don't you feel resentment? Don't you feel hate? Don't you feel anger towards India and what happened? And I said, on the contrary, no. I feel love. I feel gratitude. I feel great. I'm so grateful, Bob, for what the poorest of the poor did to save our lives. So to give you some examples, yes, many of all this happened when we moved to that little room in the slum where the vegetable woman, she would have probably 8 tomatoes or 8 potatoes in her basket to sell, and most of it would be to sell. But when they would go bad, she would keep that for us. And my mom would go and collect it, and we would cut off the bad parts and we would cook it. The meat man
Mm.
used to sell all the meat, but he used to keep these dried bones. But my mom used to go and collect it. He would give it to us free, and we would boil it and drink soup because it was nutritious, for children. I
Oh
would go to
yes,
the tea
yeah.
shop and ask the tea shop for a little milk in a little steel bowl to save my sister's life, and he would give it to me. We would go to the grocery store, who we call a modi, and we would ask for a little rice and a little lentils and a little oil to cook. And sometimes it would make us stand over there because they were busy, but every day, Bob, they just gave it to us, because it's not because we looked different or we looked foreign, or we they gave it to us because they loved us and they wanted us to survive. Those people
Oh,
actually saved our lives. If we were not in that slum with the poorest of the poor, I can tell you this, none of us would have survived. And I wouldn't be here telling you this story today.
no, you wouldn't. No, definitely. What do you think changed your life then? I know you said about you went for an interview for a bank job, Indian bank. How did that come about?
Oh, well, Bob, they say when it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And when a human being is put under a tremendous amount of pressure, and when you are forced to do things that you have to do, you know what? You find a way to do it. And I finished school, and my parents had no money to pay for us to go to college. So my dad packed me up and took me to Delhi, to my sister's house. I stayed there, and I did a small little course at shorthand and typing and whatever I could do, like for the least amount of money, just try to get some skill. But my
Yeah,
mind could not rest, because I knew that my parents were still back in Calcutta in that little room. I knew that my two little siblings were still back in that room, and they were suffering and suffering and suffering. And I was going crazy trying to think, I'm earning nothing. How do I get on my feet, and how do I get them from there? How do I take them from there? How do I get this money? How do I change their lives? What do I do? Because I'm only doing a little typing course or a shorthand course. This is not going to earn me anything. And suddenly one day I picked up the newspaper and I saw this advertisement for an executive secretary to the CEO of Bank of America. And I thought, this job is made
ooh,
for me. Bob, when you're desperate, you start thinking, I
oh
could have that,
yes.
and I could have that, and I could take my parents. And I went for the interviews, and for 6 months, Bob, they they put us through so many interviews. There were 250 girls for one job, and they put us through so many interviews,
Oh,
and we had to meet, I think, every single dignitary and manager in that bank, and we had to do grammar tests and English tests, and you just name it, we had to do it. And finally we were put in front of the CEO, and we came down to just two of us. And I said to my dad, I don't think, after 6 months, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. And at that time, I'd brought my dad to Delhi. My mum had passed away with cancer, and I was looking after the two little ones.
Oh,
And I said to my dad, I'm desperate to get this job because I had been through just a very, very difficult situation with my mom dying of cancer too, because I had no money to save her and I lost her in the end. And they put me in front of the CEO, and I remember just sitting in front of him, Bob, and just telling him that, listen, you can give me 2 jobs, you can give me 4 jobs, you can give me 8 jobs. I'll just do it. I'll find the time in the day to just do it, but just give me this job. I'm begging of you. I have had a very hard life. I have looked after I have 2 very little ones to look after. I've just lost my mom to cancer. We have been through a terrible time in life. Please just help me. And Bob, he just listened to me and listened to me. And this man never said a word back to me. And finally, he just looked me straight in the eyes across the desk and he said, we'll let you know. And I just went cold Bob. I just backed out, like, this man just hates me. And I backed out. I went down the stairs, I got in the lift, and I burst out crying. And I said to my dad, I don't think I'll get it after 6 months. I don't think I'll get it. That's how badly I wanted the job. And finally, 2 weeks later, an envelope came in the post, and I opened the envelope, and it was the appointment letter for the job. And I could not believe it. And that man changed my life, Bob. He is the one who actually got me to the UK, and I helped all my siblings to come to the UK after that. He's still my best friend. He has helped me through so much because I worked so hard, and he couldn't believe how hard I could work. Yeah.
well, you're a grafter. That's what it is. You set your mind to things, and I know what you like after all these years. You set your mind to run with life and help as many people as you can, because your upbringing, you've learnt a lot since then. And to put back it, you want to put a lot back what you've earned now and help to help for the charities, don't you?
Absolutely, Bob. There's a great quote by Viktor Franklin, the author who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And there's one quote that has stayed with me, and I use it at all my speeches, wherever I go. And he says, the meaning of life is to find your gift, but the purpose of life is to learn how to give it away. And I think that is just so great. And I live by that quote because I've learned so much in the course of my life. I have been through so much, and I respect people who don't have. I respect the poorest of the poor. And yes, that's why I have charities for men, women, and children today. And I am determined to fight for poverty and those who don't have, because I know what it is. I truly, honestly, Bob, I'm not just saying I know what it is not to have. No, I know what it is not to have. I know what it is to be born into a family of 7 and 10 siblings and everyone starving. I know what it is to go to a toilet with 3,000 other men. I know what it is to hold a dying sibling in your hand. I know what it takes, and I know how terrible that can be. So apart from being a motivational speaker to corporates and big banks now, and big corporates like Bank of America and all of these, Bank of England, and everywhere I speak, I love it. I do it because I have that career in banking, but my heart lies with the people who have far less than we do.
And I know you still go back to India, don't you? And help out with charities out there. Tell us a little bit more about your charities in India.
Well, Bob, we have 6 charities. We have training schools for girls, mainly for young girls who have little or no education, underprivileged girls. So we have computer schools for them. We have a secretarial school for them. We have an English language school for them. We have a beautician school for them. We have nursery schools for the little ones. We also have a disabled center. We try to do as much as we can and to reach out as much as we can. I received the True Legend Award from the Telegraph newspaper for the work I've done. And then after that, I received the Mother Teresa International Memorial Award as well. Yeah, for the work I do. But I am every day I expand on that, and every day I try to do more to reach more people.
I know it's very difficult for girls in India because some of them get kidnapped, don't they?
It's there's a whole host of problems, Bob. Like with any third world country, it's not just kidnapping, but they also are forced to marry at a very, very young age, at the age of 11 and 12 and 13. They're forced to marry. And because of the poverty and the malnutrition, they are tiny. They are little tiny girls, and they as thin as sticks. So they have no health and they're not ready for marriage. You know what I mean? They they they
Yeah.
don't know anything about the world. They only sometimes some of them only know their little rooms where they grow up with about 5 or 6 or 10 brothers and sisters. They don't know anything about the world, and they're married off to these 40, 50, and 60-year-old men. This is the sadness. And many of the girls come to our centers and they tell us this. Another problem is hunger. So sometimes we'll be taking a class, the teachers will be taking a class, and suddenly the girl will start crying. And you'll go up to her and say, "What's happened? Have I said something? Have I, harmed you?" And she'll say, "No, I'm just hungry. I haven't eaten for 2 days. I haven't had anything to eat. I don't know what to say. I'm feeling bad to tell you." And we have to literally, you have to hold your tears back and you have to take her out and give her something to eat. Then there's the little ones. I was delivering a speech once, Bob, in a park that when I go, they fill the parks with 7 schools and 10 schools, all kids. And I tell them my story and I say, I can take you by the hand and I can show you where I filled water from a tube well, and I can show you the toilet where I went, and I can show you I was just like you. In fact, even poorer than you. So I've made something of my life, and so can you. And all the schools and colleges invite me there to tell the story. And one day I was telling the story, and this little one from the middle of the crowd, she puts her hand up and she says, "Main bhi zinda hu," which means I'm also alive. Please notice me. That means I'm also alive. I'm not dead. And I burst out crying and I ran up to her and I picked her up and I said, "Of course you're alive. But the problem is, Bob, nobody, you can imagine just with that sentence, nobody has given her she doesn't even know that she just wants somebody to say, I love you, or I care for you, or I hear you, I see you." And she was so taken by the story, and she was so taken by what I was saying to her. She just said, like, maybe zindahu, like, I'm alive, notice me. It's that sadness. And all the little girls and all the little boys grew up like that. They simply have no one to turn to. Absolutely no one, Bob. Everywhere. And this is why I'm fighting so hard to get the movie made. Because if I can go across the world and, so for example, I was interviewed by the CEO of the World Affairs Council from America. I was interviewed by him, and his video's there at the top of my Facebook page, Jillian Haslam Public. And when he was interviewing me, he just said, "Jillian, you got this job at Bank of America. You know what? Bank of America are my biggest clients." And then they flew me to Charlotte to Bank of America to tell Bank of America, the headquarters, that Bank of America had changed my life. So you get those opportunities, Bob, but it's so hard, and it's so hard to fight for such opportunities. You know what I mean?
Of course it is, yeah. From going from nowhere, you built you built up now a reputation now for helping lots of people in India. It must be hard every time you go back to India. Um, the people wanting their help, especially young children, especially girls. You know, the lads seem to they just get over things, don't they? The dad takes them with them, and then it's the young girls that I think have a bad time. Like you said, they're wanting to get married off. It's difficult, and there's millions of people in every
Oh,
town. There must be millions and millions of them around,
oh, Bob, they've just crossed a billion.
and not many
And it's
toilets.
it's nothing. And the I think for girls it's even harder. I also say for boys it's harder because I coach a lot of the boys there too. But for girls it's even harder because they are made to stay at home just like I was. They're made to wash the dishes and clean the house and look after the family and cook the food and look after the little ones. And then they get their periods, and then they have no one to talk to about that. They have no sanitary. Imagine having your period, Bob. Sorry for this, but imagine having your period. And I know what I went through, and going to a toilet where there's no flush. It's an Indian style toilet that you have to sit on the floor and go. And there's no electricity, and there's no flush, and there's no sanitary pads. And you have to go through all of that yourself.
Oh,
It's so hard. It's horrendous. It's terrible. And then, you have to be careful as you go out on the road, because if you get wet, or if you know some if something terrible happens, or you fall, and if you bleed, everyone you're suddenly crowded by millions of guys who just want to make fun of you because they don't know better. They are so naive. They're not bad. I was asked even by the BBC, do you think that they were bad? Do you think that they were difficult? No, they're not. My dad always used to say, we've got to love them more. We've got to care for them more. We've got to understand them more, because they're just uneducated. That's all, you know. But that didn't stop us from going through what we went through, Bob, and what they're still going through.
oh, true. Yes, exactly. Still going through now. But you found your feet now. Are you still wanting to get this movie done?
Yes, Bob, very, very much so. I almost had it done and ready just before COVID hit. I had the script. I had
Oh,
flown the director who made Nightmare on Elm Street, Jack Shoulder. I had flown him from America to Calcutta.
yeah.
I had flown a script writer out from America to Calcutta. And everything, the producer was in England, the director and the screenwriter were in America. We had everything ready to go, based on the new book, A Voice Out of Poverty. um,
Yeah,
and
the voice of
COVID hit.
poverty. Yeah.
Yeah, and COVID hit, and suddenly no insurance companies wanted to insure any of the stars. Not in India, because you know what happened in India. It was worse than a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
By the thousands. So no insurance company wanted to insure any of the stars. They wouldn't let you go near or nigh India. And that's where we lost a lot, because the stars moved on, people move on, people don't wait. COVID brought a lot of, you know, people hadn't worked for 2, 3 years. People were worried. They were wanting to get back to work. They wanted to work. They wanted to earn. So now I'm back again to the drawing board. And you know me, I don't give up. So I've got a wonderful, wonderful
You
pitch that
never.
has been put together. And I've sent it to Netflix. And we are just waiting for Netflix to come back. And I'm on the lookout for. I've had 2 or 3 offers from television companies who want to turn the story into a documentary, but I'm on the lookout for good producers, good directors, and people like that who can actually take this story and turn it in. Because Bob, we've got some brilliant endorsements on the book. We've got an endorsement from Vikas Swaroop, who is the author of Slumdog Millionaire, and he just loved the book. He gave me the most fabulous
Oh, yeah,
endorsement.
yeah.
We've got the endorsement from Sarah,
Brilliant.
Duchess of York. She's given me the most fabulous
I
endorsement.
saw that,
We've
yeah.
got We've got one from Joanna Lumley, Dame Joanna Lumley, and she has a similar story to mine,
Oh, lovely.
but she just grew up in very affluent
Oh, she was from
circumstances, and we
India.
grew up in abject poverty. Yes, her parents were also ex-British servicemen. So she understands, and her endorsement is
Yeah, there was, yeah.
so touching, so touching. And apart from that, the book also, Bob, has won a Kirkus Star review, because you know how hard it is to win a Kirkus Star review. It's impossible to win, but I've worked on the
Oh,
book for
yes.
years until I got that Kirkus Star review, which I really wanted to get. And of course, the media have literally gone mad on it. You just need to get the movie made. That's all.
Do you still talk to Alan Cox?
Sometimes, yes, I do. Sometimes I talk to him. I've been on his show and many times, and yeah, I do. Yeah, he's a good friend of Jack Shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. I'm just trying to think when I spoke to him last, but a couple of months ago, I was talking to him because he said he wanted me to go on his show. And I said, anytime, you just let me know and I'll come on.
He's just a
I know
lovely
there's
guy.
Alison, Joanne, Mervyn, quite a few people in chat room. Has anybody got any questions for Jillian? Put it in capitals and I'll relay it to Jillian. If you just go into top corner of your thing, there's comments. If you click on comments above somewhere at your right hand side above where your screen is now, at side, you can click on comments. If you can see it there, you probably will do. So you're doing a lot of speaking all over the place. Do you
Yes,
enjoy
Bob.
it? I know you must enjoy speaking to different groups. Where you speaking next?
Oh, where am I speaking next? I've got two offers. I've got one offer in India, which is with a company, a limited company, and I've got another offer here, which is at a women's organization, a women's network, a very big women's network, women worldwide. But yes, I definitely love speaking. I've spoken at most of the big banks, Bank of America, Bank of England, Barclays, RBS. I've done them all, Bob, thankfully. And of course, I received an award for speaking at the maximum number of schools in the country by the Advertiser newspaper, because I try to get to schools and I try to motivate kids not to give up and to understand that they actually have it much easier than we had it, but not to give up.
Yeah,
But the
that's a great thing. That's a really good thing going into.
Yeah. Sorry, Bob, you're going.
I think it's a really good thing to go into school and talk about what happened to you. For a lot of there's a lot of I know in Halifax there's an Indian school in Halifax. What probably they would snap your hand off to go and speak there. I'm just trying to think of the name of it now. So I come from Halifax. It's quite a big one. Something like St. Clair. Yeah. And it's a big one there. There's about 2,000 children go there. But just to see what life's like when you were over there, because a lot of them have been born in the UK now. They will only go over to India for holidays, and it'd be good for them to find out what you went through growing up as a very young girl.
Yes.
into poverty.
Yes, Bob, I'm more than happy to go. I've been to very many state schools and also to very many private schools. I've even been to Cambridge, to Queen's, and I've been to Harriet Ward. I've been to King's College in London. I've been to very many universities also, and I'm trying to spread the word because when when I speak and when I tell the story, Bob, I've received some incredible endorsements. I've received some incredible testimonials, and I always receive a standing ovation. And people just need this kind of a story to not only empower the younger generation today and the kids that are coming from tomorrow, but I think if the book is done so well and the story is done so well, then I do believe that a movie can actually change millions of lives. And that's what I'm trying to get done so that I can reach many, many more people who really need this.
I'm sure. Oh God, yeah, yeah. I'm sure the movie will get done eventually. It's just unfortunate at that time when COVID was, well, a epidemic around the world at the same time. It's just one of those things in life where it'll come back a better movie this time. Sure, it will do because
Oh,
when you
yes,
look at your
absolutely.
book and the things what are in there, um, you just need somebody to along now, put it together, and it be there. Because Slumdog Millionaire were a good movie, you know, that
Yeah.
captivated a lot of people. I'm sure yours will be better.
Yes, Bob, in
I'm sure
fact,
it will be.
if you go to my website, which is jillianhaslam.com, and you look at all the press over there, you'll see the Telegraph that have actually named me the real Slumdog Millionaire. They have said, "You are the real one," they've written. And in fact, hundreds of families sent letters into the Telegraph saying, this story should actually be in every textbook for children to learn and to read. This story needs to be put into as part of the syllabus for schools. Why aren't you getting this done? And the Telegraph were going crazy. They were like, Jillian, can you just understand this? And all of that is on my website. The letters, the Telegraph actually got so many letters that they picked the best 100 and they published it. It's on my website. They published the lines from all the letters from all the parents that came
Oh,
in. Yeah, it's on my website. Yeah, so that was great too. But it's been hard, Bob, to become a speaker because you do have to, you can't just roll out of bed and become a speaker. And so I had to put in 10 long years of
no.
studying to become a speaker, of getting up to that leadership level and working as hard as I could while doing another job. And I've always been used to doing two jobs. I did two jobs in Bank of America. I did two jobs in RBS. And even now I came here and I did two jobs. I'm working and I was doing my speaker's degree to finish and to get all of the certifications, all of the requirements that you need to become a professional speaker, because you want people to respect you and you want that credibility. You don't just want to get out there. Besides, you need the skill,
Yes,
because otherwise you couldn't deliver a proper speech, a proper keynote. At least not to banks and corporates.
that's not true. Yeah. What have you learned then from your life? What's happened to you? What have you thought about what's happened and what have you learned about yourself as well?
Bob, the biggest lesson I've learned is, coming from a banking background and coming from all of this materialism and coming from a place where when people have something, they want more, and then they have that and they want more and more and more. I think what I've learned is everywhere you go, especially in the corporate world, you're looked at how successful are you? You're judged and you're measured against the success that you have in life. And I think for me, on any show I go to, I'm always asked, Jillian, what does success mean to you? And I always say, success to me is not just trying to make it through on your own or make it through by yourself, but it's important, and you have to remember to take others with you. That to me is success. Just making it through and having a house and cars and whatever is not success. You have to remember to take others with you. But my dad always used to quote William Barclay when he said, in every single person on this planet has a story. And if you don't have a story, then that's a story in itself as to why you don't have a story. But every one of us have a story to tell. And most of us have these stories of endurance, that we've been through some hardship, something that we want to share with the world. But my dad always used to say that endurance is not just the ability to bear a hard thing, but to be able to turn it into glory. Because as long as you have that endurance and that story, and people listen to you, they have a cup of tea, they move on. But the minute you turn it into something for others to take away, and you suddenly turned your story and your endurance into glory. And that's what you need to do. That's what I believe. So that's what I'm trying to do, to leave a legacy behind for the people who don't have, who somewhere, someday can pick up my book or my movie, hopefully, and change their lives. Otherwise, what is the good of our lives,
Sure.
Bob?
Exactly. Well, Melvin's just said, "Hiya, Jillian. Has anything changed for the better in India?"
Yes, thank you for your question, firstly. And yes, a lot has changed for the better in India. India, economically, as you probably know, is doing very well. On the IT front and the AI front and all of that, technology-wise, India is booming. Yeah, they're very, very technology-minded. Wealth-wise, yes, they have, I think, a country that has the most millionaires now. So they're doing very well. But what I see is this divide between the rich and the poor that has not basically been managed appropriately. The divide is still vast, and the divide is too great. So you could go to the most magnificent shopping center, and you'll find all these ladies coming out with their Louis Vuitton bags and Chanel perfumes, and they'll just cross over a little girl or a little tiny boy who's literally going to the toilet on the road making blood. And that child could be dying, but they'll just cross over and keep going. And that is the mentality that, to me, is horrific. I can't take it. I have to stop. Animals, for example, the dogs are just dying. They're being run over. Nobody cares. When I go there, Bob, I just lose it. I buy, I don't know, dozens and dozens of plastic little bowls and dozens of bottles of Bisleri water, and I put it everywhere on the streets where I am, and I give all the dogs water, because I just feel animals should not be going through something like this. The children are suffering, the ladies and the women are suffering.
Exactly.
There's too much suffering, and that suffering doesn't have to be, as Gandhi once said, there is more than enough for every man's needs. There is more than enough for every man's needs, but there just isn't enough for every man's greed. And that is the problem with India. And that's the problem with many countries, with many, many countries. Greed. It's just the greed. If you have something, you want more and more and more and more. That is the problem. If we just all stop and look at the people who don't have, we could change so many lives, Bob. We could. We don't have to give everything we have. We just have to give a little. But India is changing slowly but surely. There are a lot of people. Another problem is the NGOs are starting NGOs and starting to help, but it's only for their own benefit. So they are taking that money and paying their own household bills, paying their own, trying to get through life on their own. And they're not really helping the poorest of the poor. If you try to open a school, you're told, Oh, no, you can't put the rich with the poor. The rich kids won't come here. You can't do that. I said, excuse me, I was taken into a school, into a boarding school, where the principal and the head teacher took us in there, and the poor and the rich went to school together. Nobody asked me how poor I was, and I never looked at a girl as to how rich she was. Why can't I put? But you can't do that there. And this is the sadness and the fights that I have day in and day out
That's
of this.
terrible.
There's this inequality. This is the problem.
Yeah. Doesn't the government help out at all over there?
Sorry, Bob, I didn't get you.
Don't the government help out there at all then? With families or
Oh my gosh.
to help out anybody?
Bob,
Is
they
it
do
still
help. They have
divided?
government schools. They have there's this three problems. The government do try to help. They have opened many government schools, but the schools are so poor and the teachers don't care because they hardly paid anything, so they don't care about the poor kids. So the kids are passing out or leaving school with hardly any education. They don't know anything. They're never going to get jobs. They're married off. They're sent off from their homes as soon as possible, especially if you're a girl child. And then on the other side, you have political corruption. Corruption is so bad there that you've probably been watching the news recently. They uncovered, I don't know, boxes and boxes of notes in the minister's house, notes in his closet,
Yes,
notes in his
they
loft.
did.
They'll just uncover so much. It's just pure greed, Bob. And this is, I don't know how it's systemic, to be honest. This is the problem. Yeah.
I know Alison's just said that here, just put what she's brought. She just said money, greed, and power.
She's absolutely right.
And it's true.
She's absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. They take the jobs as,
Like you say, the more
probably
money, yes.
you've probably watched
So
this
what you got planned for the future for yourself? Go on.
for the future,
I'll let
Bob.
you speak.
I've
My internet's just gone
I've
down a bit.
Okay.
Yes.
For the future, Bob, I've just got plans to keep going. I did a very, very strong interview for the Women's Eye magazine, and they put that out in America on Thanksgiving. They kept the interview, and they wanted to put it out only on Thanksgiving. They've put that out. I do interviews all the time. I've done a number of very, very, very big podcasts too, and I'm trying to get this movie made, and I'm trying to get this out. So I keep fighting, and I keep trying to increase my reach as far as possible to try and reach as many as I can. Um, Doing a lot of courses on interviewing, job skills, coaching. No matter what I can do, I do to try and help them. That's what I do, Bob. And of course, now we have the movie being made, and my next book is almost out too.
Oh, what's your next book? What's
It's
your next
called The
book then,
Irrepressible
Jillian?
Mind.
Very interesting. About it, what it contains a little bit, like a preview.
Bob, it's available on Amazon and Apple and all of the big sites, but basically it's 9 steps to changing your life. If you asked me, what could we do, Jillian, what tips could we give somebody to change their lives from your life? What have you learned? I have come up with the 9 best ways on how you can change your life. And I've given one tiny story from my life and one story from a huge celebrity's life to try and make people understand that these are the ways in which you can change your life. So that's why it's called The Irrepressible Mind, based on resilience and this core instinct in all of us that when we want to achieve something, we can achieve it. If you are pushed to the hilt, and if you
You can
have
do it.
little siblings looking at you every day, hungry, you will do it. I've done it, and I know it works.
Yes. Yeah. Because you were determined to get that job when you went for the interview. All them 300 odd people going, you wanted that job. You was going to get it. You thought everybody, but you could do it. And your success has led a lot of people out there looking at you now think, they can do it, I can do it. And I'm sure there's loads of women out there that'll let your book and thinking, "My, she's done well. I need to be like her. I need to be like Jillian Haslam, up there and doing it for the best." And I'm glad you have done. You know, it's been a long job.
Thank you.
You've got there. Hopefully, in the next 6 months, you can get this film going.
Yes, Bob.
We'll met that book
Thank God. I mean, I hope I can get it done.
and it'll
Yeah.
show how you live. Yeah, I'm sure. Do you ever think about, I know it's a long shot, about getting a lottery grant to help?
No, I've never thought of that actually.
You know, there's um, the European one, especially the European, they make billions of money. And they always say they give it out to good causes. Well, you could always talk to somebody and ask. You never know, do you? They can only say
No,
no.
yeah, exactly. We are trying several avenues, Bob. We are trying
Or
several
they,
avenues.
yeah. Right, we're nearly end of the show. So, where can people get in touch with you, and where can people buy your books?
Bob, the book, like I said, A Voice Out of Poverty, is on Amazon. It's on Apple. It's everywhere. You just have to Google A Voice Out of Poverty and it'll come up everywhere. It's on Books for Life. It's on Apple Television. It's everywhere, Bob. You don't have to worry. Otherwise, just go to my website, which is jillianhaslam.com, just my name.com, and you can even buy the book from on there. Um, that's where it is, Bob.
When you have you planned to go back to India again?
Yes, Bob. I go 3 or 4 times a year, and I am going back there in June. I'm there again. Yes.
Oh, are you looking forward to going back?
Absolutely. I love going back. To be very honest, I love going back. And if I had my way, I would go back there tomorrow and live there. I love it there. I love being with the poorest of the poor. I love being on the streets with the people who need me. And I love just caring for them. I love teaching the kids. I love teaching the grown-ups. I love bandaging their wounds. I love looking after their eyesight. I love taking them to the doctor. I love giving them rations. From a little girl, Bob, I never really wanted to be a doctor or a teacher or anything like that. It was my dream to try to help hundreds and hundreds of people. And I don't know whether it was what happened to me that did that to me, or whether I just saw in all its glory, poverty in all its glory. But you know, Bob, as they say, poverty is like a punishment for a crime that you didn't commit. A very wise man once said, poverty is like a punishment for a crime that you didn't commit. And I feel like that because we were punished for a crime that we didn't commit, and millions around the world are being punished for crimes that they haven't committed, just for being born. And I think that's inequality at its worst extent. That's what I believe.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I know Melvin's just said here. Let's have a look. Jillian, don't you think that India is overpopulated? The reason is a lot of poverty and jobs wise.
Yes,
I think you can sort of places, can't you?
it's definitely overpopulated. I think we just crossed the 1 billion mark or something like that. And I also think that um, definitely there's scarcity of jobs because all the people from the villages have all come into the metropolitan cities um, from all over India. So cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Calcutta are all even more populated than the rest of India. So yes, there's definitely a lot of crime, there's a lot of poverty, and poverty is really the worst over there, and that's where it's just terribly sad. Yeah. But I try to do my best here as well for a lot of girls, and a lot of schools, a lot of universities, and a lot of people too. I speak at very many women's
Yes.
organizations and networks, and I don't ever charge them, Bob. I just do it because, for example, African ladies will be doing so much good work in Africa, and if they call me to speak, I can raise funds for them and they just take it back to people in Africa. But that's the circle of life, right? We have to help each other. We can't always look at money.
Ah,
I can't always say to somebody, please
yeah,
pay me. I'm a speaker,
yeah.
please pay me because I have charities. No,
No.
sometimes you have to give back in any way you can. You must give back. That's what I believe.
Yes. I think yes, you do right. And I'm sure you've been back in this life a few times. And I think in your past life you used to do it as well. And in this life, you're more now than you've ever done. But you love doing it, your passion's there, you want to
Yeah.
help people as much as you can. And I'm glad there's people
Yeah.
like you and like going to India and helping. And you get satisfaction out of it as well. I know what you're like. You want to be out there and doing it.
Yeah, Bob, when I go to big corporates, like when I went to Bank of America, Bank of England,
And
or no, Nova Nordic, etc., and they all tell me, "Oh, Julian, you're such a great speaker, and you did so well." And sometimes I get a testimonial saying, "We've heard so many speakers, but by far, my God, you're the most inspirational speaker we've ever heard." it it makes me feel good, Bob, but it does nothing for me as a person. What makes me come alive is when I'm with the poorest of the poor. That's where I belong. That's who I love. That's what I love doing. And that's so whether I do it in this country, in the UK, for as many schools and however many hearts and minds I can touch, or whether I do it at other speeches for people to take the money back to Africa, or whether I do it back in India, that's what I love doing. I just want to make a difference in the world. I think we all have a purpose, and I truly believe this is mine.
we do. We have. And that's why I like having people like you on my show because you inspire people. I know Joanne's just said, what a nice lady to help people so much and animals. That's Joanne in the chat room. Um, you know, um, we want more people like you. I always say to people, they say, who's on your show? I'll say so and so. But just because you don't know them, they have a story to tell. And
Yes,
lots of people who
yes,
listen to the show, they might get something out of it, or they might say to listen to that show. There's been a lady on there talking about India, and that's what'll happen. Word will get around.
yeah. And
But I won't.
I,
This time I
I'm
won't leave
always,
it 10 years.
I now inspire a lot of the young underprivileged girls, Bob, to tell their stories. Now I teach them the basics in public speaking, and in their own language I make them stand up and tell their stories. And now I'm writing a short book on the most powerful stories that the world has ever heard, because some of these girls have stories that will shake you to the hilt. You can never imagine that these girls have been through. You think I've been through so much. You've got to listen to their stories. They are truly amazing, but nobody gives them the chance to speak. So I say to them, I'm going to give you that chance to speak. I want to hear your story, and I want to take your story out to the world. That's what I want to do. This is how I want to empower them. And sometimes they're like running to the toilet and they're all feeling all scared. But once they open up, Bob, oh my God, you would just love them. You would think, this girl has so much strength and courage. How did she even do it? It's like a 12-year-old girl,
Good.
Bob, a little 12-year-old works in three houses as a domestic servant to pay for her cancer treatment. Can you believe this? A little 12-year-old. These are the kind of stories. She pays, she gets the money, she goes to the hospital, she pays and she gets her treatment and she goes back to work. Do you ever find a 12-year-old girl here doing something like that? These are the stories that I want the world to know, to listen to.
No way. I'll tell you what, what's still going on about marriages. That's still happening in the UK, I think, where a father might say, I've got arranged marriage for you. You know, it must be difficult for a young girl to say, I don't want to do that, but you have to do it. Don't you think it's time things changed a little bit, or have they been changing?
Things are changing very rapidly, Bob. There is still, yes, a lot of that over here, even in the UK, where girls are forced to get married. But of course, over here, they know that they have the government backing them, they have women's organizations, they have the police, they have the law backing them. So they know that they don't have to do it. But in India, there is a lot of this still going on where they just have to do it. And if they don't, their lives are in danger, their families will disown them. There's lots and lots of issues still, but a lot of girls are coming out saying, I will not, you will not do this to me anymore, you will stop. And this is slowly happening. There's still a lot of families, backward families, who are trying to control you, because that's what happened for so long. It's going to take quite some time to get away from that grip, but it is changing. Life is changing for girls, and it takes women like me to go back to Africa, to come back to India, and to go back to these third world countries and to fight for what is right, for fight for justice. That's what we have to do. The only evil in the world is when good men don't stand up and say something. I think that's the worst evil. And that's where we mustn't stop. We must stand up and speak for justice. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it does. I hope they do, some of these young lads, and saying, oh, no, I don't want to arrange marriage. I want to find my own bride. That would be absolutely fantastic if they did their part as well.
Yes, Bob, the world is changing. We are getting there. I think slowly but surely, but it'll take a lot of voices, and it'll take a lot of people to take a lot of sacrifice, because sometimes you may not get through, but you can still fight and you can still get out there. You know, I like tomorrow, if something happened to me, I don't care. I have no care. If somebody, many people tell me, Jillian, don't go back to India after you've given that interview. Don't go back to India after that person has published such an interview or what you've said. Don't go back to Africa. Don't say that. I'm like, I have no care. Please do with me what you wish. Take my life. I have no issue. I know that I have lived my life, the best life possible, Bob, and I have done the best I possibly can for man, woman, and child. And it's not about the Mother Teresa awards and all of that. It's from my heart. I feel I have done the best I possibly can. And now I must leave it to someone else. That's why I think the book, the movie is all important, because I know that some little girl somewhere will walk into a bookshop, pick up my book, and it will change her life, and she will go on to change hundreds of other lives. That's the legacy I want to leave behind.
Ah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Melvin's just said, God bless Jillian.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show. You know, it's been
Thank you, Bob.
all them years. I'm not going to leave it too long next time. And well, you
as soon
get
as
the
the
film
movie's
done.
made up,
That would be
you
the
will move
icing on
first.
the cake. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm looking forward to, yeah, that would be fantastic. That would make anybody's day. Everybody in the chat room said, thank you. What a great woman. Love Jillian.
Oh,
And
thank you.
so thank you again.
Very, very grateful.
We'll keep in touch with you as well. Hey, thank you.